What is React? React is like a tool that helps us build websites that feel fast and interactive. It was made by Facebook and is especially useful for making websites that don't need to refresh every time you click something. Example: imagine scrolling through your Facebook newsfeed. When new posts appear without refreshing the page, that's React at work. What are components in React? Think of components as small building blocks, like Lego pieces, that make up a React application. Each component is a part of the UI, like a button, a header, or a profile card that can be reused wherever needed. Example: if we make a login button as a component, we can reuse it anywhere in our app without recreating it every time. What is JSX? JSX is a special syntax that lets you write HTML-like code in JavaScript files. It looks like HTML but is actually JavaScript code that React can understand. In JSX, you can write "Hello World" directly in your JavaScript code. It feels like HTML, but it's JavaScript that React reads. What is state in React? State is like memory for a component where we can store data that might change over time. State lets components remember things like user input, counters, or whether a feature is turned on or off. For a counter button that increments every time you click it, we'd store the current count in the component's state. What are props in React? Props are like arguments you pass to a function. They allow one component to send data to another, almost like one part of a website giving information to another part. A greeting component might take a name prop to display a personalized message. So, if we pass name is Alice, it will say, "Hello Alice." What's the difference between state and props? Both state and props hold data, but the difference is where the data comes from. State is like private data for a component to manage itself, while props are data received from outside, typically from a parent component. In a profile component, age might be in its state because it can change, but name might be a prop passed from the parent component. What is the virtual DOM? The virtual DOM is like a virtual copy of the real web page that React uses to check for updates. When something changes, React updates the virtual DOM first, finds the difference, and only changes what's necessary on the real page. When you change the color of a button, React updates it in the virtual DOM first, then updates only that button on the actual page, making things faster. What is the useEffect hook? useEffect is a function that lets us run some code at certain times in a component's life, like right after it's created or when specific data changes. If you want to fetch data from an API when the page loads, you'd use useEffect to make the API call as soon as the component appears on the screen. What are controlled and uncontrolled components? In controlled components, React manages and keeps track of the data like input values in a form. In uncontrolled components, the input field manages itself and React isn't involved. Controlled, React keeps track of the input's value. What is the context API? The context API allows components to share data without passing props through each layer. It's useful when we have data, like themes or user information, that needs to be available to many components. If you want to create a dark mode toggle, the context API allows the theme, light or dark, to be accessible to any component in the app without manually passing it down.